friends, it's Rana, and today I'm finally here to tell you about my top 10 books of 2020. 2020 was a great reading year for me. I read 102 books, which was amazing. I gave more than half of these books 4 and 5 stars. That's why it was very hard for me to narrow this list to only 10 books. I'll be talking about the top 10 books in no particular order because it would be too hard and too cruel for me to pick number one favorite book. That's why I'll be mentioning them randomly. But first, I have 3 honorable mentions for you. The first one is Sea Prayer by Khaled Hosseini, a very short book about the current Syrian refugee crisis. It is written in form of a letter from a father to his son, alongside some gorgeous illustrations. So short yet so powerful. It was a reread for me, and it is as great the second time around. And it also got me as emotional as the first time I read it. The next honorable mention I have for you is The Golem and the Jinni by Helen Wicker, an amazing historical fantasy about a newly made golem called Khava and a newly released jinni called Ahmed, and their new lives in New York City and their unlikely friendship. This book amazed me on how accurate it talked about jinn and Syrian people back in the day, like in 1899. It has amazing representation and beautiful storyline and characters, and I bet that the author made a lot of research to make this book as accurate as it turned out to be. And the last honorable mention I have for you is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, one of the most beautifully written literary fictions I ever read. It is a little bit long, but it is worth the read. I made a separate review for this book. I'll leave a link in the description box and up in the cards if you would like to check it out. And now for my 10 favorite books of 2020. I'll first be talking about the fiction books, which are 7. Then I'll be talking about the remaining 3, which are non-fiction. The first book I have on this list, and I'm sure that it will be on many other people's list, is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. A very recent read for me. I read it in November. I loved it and will never stop raving about it. We follow Linus Baker, a 40-year-old lonely man. He lives only with his cat, and his life is basically just his work. He works as a caseworker in the department in charge of magical youth. His main role is to go and visit these government orphanages that are full of magical creatures, and he makes sure that the people working in these orphanages are doing their job right and taking care of these magical children. One day he is given highly secretive assignment to go visit and inspect an orphanage on an island. This orphanage is very different than any other orphanage he ever visited. The children there and their caretaker, Arthur, are very different than any other he ever met. I adore this book, and these characters are so precious. I already feel like rereading it. Everyone said this, and I'm saying it too. This whole book felt like a warm hug, and it deserves all the hype surrounding it. It was so cute and heartwarming and surprisingly funny. I wasn't expecting to laugh as much as I did while reading it. It is the only fantasy book I have on my list because I didn't read as much fantasy books in 2020, which I'm going to fix in 2021. The next book is Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. Historical fiction is probably my favorite genre to read, so it is not that surprising to see one on my list. This book is set in Memphis, 1939, following Rel Foss, a 12-year-old young girl and her 4 younger siblings. They live on a boat with their parents as water gypsies, and one night, due to some complications, their father had to rush their mother to the hospital, and Rel is left in charge because she is the oldest. But then some strangers come and take her and her siblings by force, i.e. kidnap them, and put them in an orphanage called Tennessee's Children's Home Society, and things keep going down from there. This book, unfortunately, is based on the true story of the sister of the devil himself, Georgia Tan, who was the director of the Memphis branch of Tennessee Children's Home Society. Georgia Tan operated this organization where she kidnapped children from their own families and homes and sold them as illegal adoptions to the rich. The main characters in this book are fictional, but what they went through and Georgia Tan are very, very real. It is a great historical fiction book and I highly recommend it. And if you decide to pick it up and read it, please make sure to read the author's note at the end of the book. It will boil your blood as it did with mine when you find out how Georgia Tan was punished. The next book is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie McCasey. The first time I heard about this book was from Murphy Napier. She talked about it many times on her channel, so I had to pick it up to see what it is about, and it didn't disappoint whatsoever. It is a small yet a powerful book about a boy who is traveling, we don't really know where, and on his way he meets a mole, a fox, and a horse in that order, and they talk with each other and have conversation while they are in this journey. You can say it is philosophical, self-help, inspirational picture book. And don't let the picture book part fool you, because it is not a children's book. And no, it is for all ages. It is a book full of beautiful drawings made by the author with even more beautiful lessons on life. The next book shouldn't be a surprise to any of you. I talked about it more than once on this channel, and it is Bird Box by Josh Millerman. This was a reread for me, and it is still a favorite of mine. I just love this book so much, and sometimes I wish I could erase my memories of it so I could experience it for the first time again. That's how much I love this book. And if you don't know, Bird Box is set in our modern world where some strange things start happening. Mysterious creatures suddenly appear out of nowhere, and when people look at them directly or indirectly, they lose their marbles and start killing people around them, then killing themselves. A phenomenal book, one of the creepiest things that I've ever read, and I suggest that if you want to read it with your eyes rather than listening to the audiobook, because it makes it more suspenseful. The sequel even came out this year. It is called Mallory. I read it, found it to be disappointing, and if you want to know my thoughts on it, I'll leave you the separate review video I made for it in the description box down below. Another historical fiction on my list is The Hill by Catherine Stockett. This one is set in 1962 Jackson, Mississippi, following three main characters, Skeeter, Minnie, and Abilene. Skeeter is a white young lady who was brought up by a black nanny, and she was really attached to her. And when she grows up, she is mad at the way black people are being treated, and she wants to make some change in her community by writing a book full of stories and the experiences of black maids in her neighborhood and what they face on a daily basis for working for white people and how they mistreat them. So she asks for help from Minnie and Abilene, who are two black maids, to help her write this book. Such a moving book, and it has one of my favorite characters ever, Minnie. She's smart, kind, and the sassiest character ever. I just adore her, but it is a shame that we have the least number of chapters from her perspective out of the three ladies. The next book I have is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I originally didn't give this book 5 out of 5 stars, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. But the more I think about it, it is more of 4.5. It is a science fiction book following Jake Epping, a high school English teacher, who one day his friend Al, who owns a diner, tells him his secret. He has a time-traveling portal in his storeroom, which allows him to travel back in time to 1958. Al, for some reasons mentioned in the book, asks Jake to use this portal to time travel back to 1958, 5 years before the assassination of Kennedy, to try and stop it. This book is so much more than that, and I can't stress enough how much I enjoyed it. It is my favorite Stephen King book and a new favorite of mine, even though it is not a whole 5-star book. The reason why I didn't give it 5 out of 5 stars is because it is started very strong and ended very strong, but halfway through it shifted its focus to romance more than anything else, and I really don't enjoy romance in books. Mind you, the romance was done pretty good in this book, but it annoyed me a little bit because it took very big part of the story. But all in all, I really love this book, and it is a new favorite for sure. The next book is Mythos by Stephen Fry. This one, from the title, you can tell it is all about mythology, Greek Gods and Goddesses, simply written by Stephen Fry in a new funny way. I love this book and the way it is written, and I literally highlighted many things in it because I am obsessed with the Greek mythology and it is one of my favorite books talking about that subject. I read a good number of books compiling the most popular Greek myths, and this one is my favorite. I like the way it presented it. I'm pretty sure that I'll be going back to this book many times in the future to check some things. And it is the first book out of two books, I think, written by the same author. The second one, I own it. It is called Heroes, but I didn't still read it. This one is about gods and goddesses, this one is about heroes, and I plan to slowly read it in 2021 if I had the time. And these books have some really cool pictures in them. I really love them and enjoyed looking at them while reading the book. So cool. Now for the non-fiction part of this video, the first book that I need to talk about is You Should Talk to Someone by L'Oreal Gottlieb. Okay, this book is like a memoir of the author. She is a therapist and it talks about her life, and because of some bad breakup she goes through, she decides that she needs to see a therapist herself, and the book is about her journey with therapy, and she also shares the story of some of her patients. I think she shares the stories of 4 or 5 of her patients with us. It is a great book about mental health. Her parts of the story were a little bit boring for me. I enjoyed the patient's parts more, but overall a great book and I highly recommend it. The next book is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty. I read all of Caitlin Doughty's books in 2020 and I loved every one of them, and I talked about them numerous times on this channel. I just love her and love her books, and this one is my favorite out of the 3. Smoke Gets in Your Eyes is Caitlin's memoir on how she graduated with a degree in medieval history and how she then took a job in a cemetery which changed her life and made her study and became a mortician herself. I learned many important things from her books about death, how to deal with it and accept it as a part of life, the funeral industry, the working in a cemetery, being a mortician. I became more and more interested and invested in what she is talking about, to the point that after I finished reading her 3 books, I went to YouTube and started binge watching all her YouTube videos because she has a YouTube channel called Ask a Mortician. I love her sense of humor. It is not that easy to be funny while talking about death. She has the same dark humor as me. I will read anything she writes. She's just amazing. And the last book I have for you today is Educated by Tara Westover. It is another memoir, but it is the most heavy and intense one out of the 3 that I mentioned. It is about Tara Westover and her life growing up and living with her survivalist Mormon family in the mountains of Idaho. Her parents don't believe in modern medicine nor in public schooling, which resulted in her and her 7 siblings not having to go to hospitals when they are sick or went through bad accidents. And they also didn't go to school. They don't have birth certificates, and her father believes in many wild things, like one day the government will discover that he doesn't send his kids to the school, so they will come and kill them. The book also talks about her fight and struggle to become educated and the things that she went through just to reach the point she is at now. This book contained many things that shocked me, and I previously told you guys that I'm going to make a separate review video for this book, but I'm not sure anymore if I'm going to do that, because every time I sit to think about this book I get really angry. So we'll see about that, if I will end up making that video or not. I highly recommend this book for you if you enjoy memoirs or autobiographies. Even if you don't, just give it a try. It is a really great, horrifying story, And I think Tara Westover is a great woman for going through all these things and staying strong. I couldn't do that. So that's it for all of my favorite books I read in 2020. Please tell me in the comment section what are some of your favorite books you read last year. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to see my future videos and I will see you next time. Bye!